So, while we've already been in the middle of Pride for a while now, and while there are, already lots of talks about Pride and kink and the combination thereof, I figured why not go a little bit sideways and talk more about what kink is and where it stems from. Insofar, at least as it relates to myself, I don't want to speak for all other individuals. And one of the funny things about research, such as it exists, into kink is that it really turns out that fetishes and kinks come from all sorts of different sources, have all sorts of different origin points, and there isn't one very hard set rule about how kinks develop.
Now where do you think you're going? Thought it was wrong to come over. My daddy won't be home till dark. Now where do you think you're going? Thought it was wrong to come over when your mama says I'm no good boy. Oh, what
So, as we get into this, like I say, I really want to focus on a lot of the kinks that I personally have, which, do not include things yet. I will admit I'm getting intrigued, but do not include things right now like pup play or certain elements of leather, the leather culture aspect of bondage, as it were. But to be honest, one of the things that we do hear a lot in terms of theories, hypotheses as to how kink is formed and such, is relating it to things that correlate to your own sexual awakening. And for me, that really is kind of the case. So, like I said in my coming out video and such, I had a lot of crushes, a lot of fixations on men, way before ever knowing that gay existed, which I didn't find out until I was 13. So from the ages of 12 all the way down to 5, I was having lots of guy crushes, lots of fascination with men, with male bodies, with muscle, and not having a context for what this was, I sort of funneled it and fueled it into, quote unquote, typically male, mask, boyish pursuits. And this was usually action films. I didn't think there was anything sexual going on. I just thought I was really into the idea of watching these two guys get totally oily and sweaty and messed up, fighting each other, punching each other, choking the hell out of each other, tying each other up, getting injured, which, was a fairly natural progression into my related kinks of, breath control, breath play, dominance, submissiveness, sort of brat elements, and be able to fight back and, try to give as good as you're taking it. And, of course, bondage. Just a lot of my fetishes ended up stemming from this stuff that was related to things I was very attracted to, men, but were not themselves sexual exploits or, inherently sexual practices. And it's to a degree, I still don't really think of these things as sexual practices. I mean, yes, I probably could, get off solely on the idea of a guy, choking me out multiple times, and I really do want to try that one day. I could see a lot of things being incredibly pleasurable for me, but they aren't intrinsically connected to sex at all times. And while I definitely am the kind of person who prefers fetishes and kinks to be mixed into the standard sex, I could still enjoy them as isolated events, which is also something very interesting. So people are equating all kink is sex, all kink is sexual, etc. But one thing I have noticed is that when people have interests like this, when people have things like this that they enjoy and get off to in a certain way, whether it is a dynamic, whether it is a power play, whether it is certain activities like elements of bondage or sadomasochism, something that does pop up a lot to me is that these people don't necessarily need sex, or in some cases they don't enjoy intermeshing the two in the way I do. So if you see someone who is very into getting tied up, restricted, being unable to move, being able to undo things, and being left there and such, it isn't always going to be okay, now that you're tied up, here's the 25 men, they're going to fuck your ass. Okay, now that you've done this, we're going to just wait for you to go ahead and come because you're so into this. Granted, that can happen, but these things can have positives to them and elements to them that are still satisfying and sexually enjoyable, even if it isn't intrinsically related to coming or sex or any form of, like, what we could say traditionally sexual gratification. In fact, I think one of the best examples of this would probably be chastity kinks, which low-key, yeah. But chastity kinks, even though, again, these guys can still figure out ways to come in their device, they can figure out ways to get pleasure in their device. And usually it is basically just about, like, taking the aspect of control of one's self-pleasure away from the penis, in a sense, because you can still come from other things, and you can become a better bottom by learning your body, learning how to work with your tops, so that they can get you off from anal, from oral, giving it, from all these other things in sex. And there is that, but there are also people I know who, like, just enjoy the idea of chastity and being locked up and being owned by someone purely for that in and of itself. And they don't necessarily need to be, shooting off cum every other day from prostate stimulation. They don't need to be in these dynamics all the time. It's just the idea of it being locked up. And again, you want to talk about kink in public? Literally anyone in a chastity device could be walking around. They could be the cashier in your grocery store. They could be driving next to you on the freeway. They could be picking up kids from school. And the thing is, you're never gonna know. And that's the really funny thing too, because something else someone brought up, that this is a sideline, I'll be honest, but something someone brought up is that there are so many aspects of kink fashion and such that are mirrored a lot by the sort of high era of mall goth styles. Hot Topic elements, where everyone was wearing an actual dog collar on their throat, not just a choker, not just actual dog collars, where they had harnesses, they had leather gear, they had stuff with, bondage elements. The trip pants were like bondage incarnate, and chains, ropes, etc. So much of that stuff was, part of a standardized fashion, and people didn't really like kink shame it. They didn't look at it as obscene. Granted, there were some parents like that, but these parents also thought that listening to music was, the devil worship if it was over a certain amount of decibels. But a lot of the gear related to kink is just not intrinsically necessary to it. Yes, a leather daddy is very sexy, and it is hot to have a leather daddy holding ropes on you and controlling you and telling you what he's going to do to you and how you're going to like it or else. That is fucking hot as fuck. But if you take all the leather off of him, take off the hat, even, God forbid, shave the mustache, he's still going to be the dominant. You're still going to be able to carry out all these dynamics without any of that apparel. So, likewise, if you could take the apparel out and still have pretty much all of the kink there, you could take the actual acts themselves out and just leave the clothes. And it just is clothing, which, hello, right here. And then I don't really have many of these outside of CNC, which, consensual non-consent, is not exactly something that I can, easily do in public in any sense, let's be honest, and I'm not exactly going to. But here's the thing. CNC for me is a mind space type thing. It is taking yourself out of your body, out of your now, out of your default experience, and just becoming something else. In this case, someone whose consent or whose voice isn't mattering in the scene. Someone who can get used and abused and hurt and pleasured and have anything happen to them, and even if they say no, even if they're fighting back, it can still happen. That to me is incredibly freeing, and it's enjoyable, and there's risk to it that is thrilling, and I love that. But, I'm not actually getting raped by anyone in this scene. I am not actually being abused or misused at all. It's something that is set up so that those things can happen, but in a way that does intrinsically involve my actual consenting and agreeing to everything that's going on. But, again, right here, we have a nice example with some of the best people I know, pup play. I have gotten to know so many pups recently. All of them are sweet, amazing, wholesome people, and the one thing that I have noticed as a consistent is that outside of the sexual aspect of pup play, which definitely is there a lot, something else about them is the non-sexual side of it. That they can get out of their now, get out of their default, get out of whatever they are as standard, and get into a mindset that is simple, that is easy, that is playful, affectionate, that desires affection in turn, and is something that, replicates things that they don't really get in their day-to-day or have as free access to in their day-to-day. And I've also noticed, especially, there's a lot of neurodivergent pups, but I feel like neurodivergency and kink and sexuality are a whole discussion. But to me, that is one of the things. If you can separate kink from sex, which we can, no question, sorry guys, but we can, then why can't you also separate elements of a kink, like this, the mental headspace, the disassociation, the benefits, from the actual sex acts themselves, which makes perfectly logical sense to me, to be honest. And there are plenty of times where pups will even play together, have fun with the trainer, etc., that are not intrinsically sexual, but just about position and mentality and right headspace, which is something that, honestly, y'all vanilla folks out there, no offense to your boring-ass sex lives, but y'all need to get into this idea that there can be more than just experiencing life as you experience it. That there can be more than just, accepting things as a default way and never veering away from that. Which, to me, ultimately is one of the most beautiful and important aspects of kink in general. The fact that our sex lives, our sexual experiences, our sexual joys, our kinks and our fetishes can open up our eyes and our windows to completely new ways of thought, completely new dynamics and ways of being with other people, being with ourselves. And it's gorgeous and lovely. And quite honestly, for the headspace I was in for a while when I didn't fully realize my kinks, to when something clicked in me and I realized what I was into and I started pursuing it, I'll be honest, my sex got a lot better, and more importantly than that, my mentality got a lot better, because I stopped thinking that there was only one way to enjoy sex and that my lack of enjoying it was my fault. And I started figuring out what I wanted out of sex. And by doing that, I figured out how to demand it, how to ask for it. And that opened up a whole bunch of doors, and I got better connections with people, I got better connections with hookups, with even relationship type people, and it made things a lot better, and it really is something beautiful when you get into it. And again, I am not going to knock vanilla sex. I'm not going to knock vanilla people. If there are things that you never want to try, that's fine. But you never wanting to try something doesn't mean that you have to be disingenuous and disgusted and villainize people who do enjoy things. And if we could just learn that there are so many varieties of life and sex and sexuality and expression, if we could embrace variety and difference, that's beautiful. And that is literally what the point of Pride is. So, to reiterate from a previous video, yes, kink definitely belongs at Pride, but I'm also going to say kink is integral to us figuring ourselves out, to us getting to know ourselves, and building off that knowledge to create better senses of self-worth. And I do wish that more people would get to understand that, because it's going to make things so much better for you when you can accept that. So, yeah, this was me talking about, how kinks develop. Talking about how kinks develop you as a person, how they can help you in certain ways, and once again reiterating the idea that kink belongs to Pride. If you enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe. I'm going to see you guys in the next one. And of course, remember, life always gets better as long as you work in it, brick by brick. See ya!